The
With you.
entire game was lost, and the momentum and all of the building up and all of the puffing up and everything that has gone into the season, Hard Knocks and all the soundbite clips from Dan Campbell were lost when you were 4th and 9. You went for it, your quarterback fumbled, and they returned it for a touchdown. That was the game. The game was over, and it leads to a question of, you know, and I want to hear the comments from everybody too. Is it kind of time to punt on the season? You're 1-4 heading into a bye week. There's no game coming up next week. You've got a bye to try to get right, but at 1-4 with already unmet expectations, there's not a person in this city. And if you are one, you are lying to yourself. They believe they'd be 1-4 going into the bye.
Mm-mm.
So now that they are 1-4, is this a time for them to punt on the season? Before you answer that, I want to react to some of this stuff right here. Charles said this. Charles says the worst of it all was losing to Patricia. Yeah, that for sure needs to. It's like salt in an open wound, man.
Ricky had a good quotable. We were talking during the game, and at this point, they were just kicking. New England was just kicking field goals, and then they had the defensive scoop that they took it to the house for a touchdown. He said, "Well, at the very least, Patricia's offense hasn't scored a touchdown yet. That was the only saving grace that he didn't have anything to work with." But then, out of nowhere, Zippity Doodah decided to become a star and just tear this offense or this defense apart, along with their running game. Stevenson had like 160 yards on the ground.
Yeah, he
To
did.
answer the question, I don't think it is yet.
Okay.
And again, it's a very slim bit of hope that you can hang on this point. We haven't seen JMO yet. Amon-Ra St. Brown tried to suit up, but he really wasn't much of a
85% of the snaps he played on Sunday.
yeah, it was clear he wasn't the
Yeah,
same, and
not
they just weren't able to move the ball. Josh Reynolds deserves a lot of credit. He is making some tough catches. He's playing through injuries. He is playing some very good football right now with Jared Goff.
mhm.
But outside of that, I don't want to say it's time to punt on the season yet. I have very slim hope that we're going to see them, like you said, playing in meaningful games later in the year, things of that sort. I don't think that's going to happen, but at this point, I don't think it's safe to say they should be punting on the season because we haven't seen. I don't think JMO's going to turn that much of a difference, but I still think it's a little too soon to make that call.
So here's the thing, right? And I'm gonna actually bring in my screen for a second here as I do this real fast because I want
Do
to
it.
throw up this poll that we threw up on Detroit Sports Nation.
Okay.
Okay. And it is a poll. Let me fix this real quick. But it's a poll, and we just simply asked right here, what are your feelings about the rest of the season? Like, how are you feeling about the rest of the season? Do you have a moderate feeling where you think that they're going to only get to 5 or 6 wins on the season? Do you still have high expectations where they're going to get to 7 or 8 wins? One of them was they're not going to win a game the rest of the season, and that could be reactionary based on New England and things like that. But then another question was I have low expectations. They're only going to get to a total of 3 to 5 wins. 61% of our fans, of our DSN fans, and people in this Facebook group here said that they will get between 3 and 6 wins total on the season at this point. And I think that is realistic. I think
Yep.
that the idea of punting on a season, I'm with it. Anybody that thought they were going to contend this season wasn't looking close enough at this roster. This roster was left in turmoil when Quinn Trisha left and was
Mm-hmm.
fired because you had number one, a bad culture that ran off Quandre Diggs, that ran off Glover Quinn, that ran off Darius Slay. Imagine those guys on your defense right now.
Darius Slay still a top 5 corner. You can legit have him and Jeff Okudah right now at this moment.
If it wasn't for Quinn Trisha.
Yep.
So you're talking about a GM, and I think that that's why. I think that that is why, this comment from Matt, the narrative that Dan and company need to be fired needs to be put to bed, is somewhat realistic. Even though Andy does disagree and says, why does Campbell still have a job? The reason why Campbell still has a job is because we're 22 games into a rebuild. We're 22 games into a complete rebuild, which sucks for Detroit Lions fans. Listen to me. Let me be very clear. This sucks horribly for Detroit Lions fans. And you've been told since 1957, just wait a little bit longer. Just wait a little bit longer. Just wait a little bit longer. But the reality is, this roster was so bad. But you're talking about a regime that drafted Jelani Tavai a projected 7th round pick in the 2nd round
Yep.
that drafted Tease Tabor, who didn't last more than
Ugh.
3 years in the league, in the 2nd round. That
Yep.
drafted Gerard Davis in the 2nd. This was not a good roster when Brad Holmes and Dan Campbell got here. Now, is Dan Campbell a little too rah-rah and not enough X's and O's? 100%. We have said this from the beginning. He needs to get better at the X's and O's, and if
Mhm.
he does not get better at the X's and O's, he either needs to step away or he needs to hire somebody that is good at them. 4th and 9, down 6-0, you do not go for it there,
No.
especially with a new kicker that you've just signed and a 50-yard field goal. 50-yard field goals are the new 40-yard field goals. Everybody
Yeah.
makes a 50-yard field goal.
Yep.
Kick the ball,
Kick the ball, take the
and at
punts.
worst, punt the ball. Now, I
Yes.
understand, like, all the other 4th down decisions, I have absolutely 0 problem with. When you're above, your own 40-yard line and it's
Yep.
4th and short, go for it. I don't
Mhm.
I mean, statistically and analytically, it makes the most sense.
Mhm.
But the problem is we're having too many times where we come back and we go, "Well, that decision cost them.
Exactly.
Oh, that decision cost them."
Yep. What could have been
This
if we
could
if they
very
actually did this, right?
this very easily should be a 2-3 team at worst right now. They could very easily be a 3-2 team, but could have, would have, and should haves don't get you Lombardi trophies.
Exactly.
Taking a look in the mirror and going, "Ah, man, what do I need to do to get better?" is what gets you Lombardi trophies. And
Exactly.
also understanding from a fan base, this is 22 games of a rebuild.
Yep.
And 5 weeks ago, when we were in the preseason and Hard Knocks was still on HBO, everybody was willing to run through a wall for Dan Campbell.
And
You're
that's
ready
what
to give up 5 weeks into the season? I don't think so. Not yet. Not yet.